Welcome to the Circuit of Success Podcast.
The Circuit of Success Podcast.
With your host,
Brett
Gilliland.
Brett Gilliland, Visionary Wealth Advisory.
The Circuit of Success Podcast. Let's start the show.
Welcome to the Circuit of Success. I am your host, Brett Gilliland, and today I've got Alex M.H. Smith with me. What's up, Alex? How we doing?
Not too bad. Just, being cold over in England. That's how we do things.
What's the temperature like there right now?
Oh, I guess it's probably like 50 in your language.
Okay. So, yep. We're going to be 95 tomorrow here, and it's here we are in September. It's a little crazy. But before we get started, for those that are listening and not watching, I'm talking to somebody who's over in England, like he just said. He's got a vest on. He's got this T-shirt on underneath it, and I can see about 2 letters. And I had to ask him before we started recording. I said, "Can you show me that T-shirt?" And he shows me, and it's a University of Illinois T-shirt, and he's all the way over in England. I'm like, "Holy smokes! I grew up 35 minutes from the University of Illinois, and you've got some fond memories there, and you studied abroad over here, correct?"
Yeah, that's right. Best year of my life over there in Champagne. I tell you, it's a far cry from the English university experience. I was looking for something, from my way of thinking of it, I was looking for something that was exactly like what you see in the movies. And damn it, that's what Illinois gives you. It is a very classic, stock American university experience.
Get the big, beautiful buildings. You got cornfields all around you. You get it all, man. A lot of diversity. It's pretty amazing there. So I told you I grew up an Illinois fan, still an Illinois fan to this day. But then when your son goes to University of Missouri and you start writing some checks, you can also put on the black and gold. So I never thought as a kid that I could wear Missouri and Illinois stuff maybe in the same year, and here I am doing it. So, well, anyway, that's not what this podcast is about. This, again, is about Alex M.H. Smith. He's a strategy author. He's an advisor. He's a founder. He's helping founders and CEOs escape competition by making strategy simple, clear, and bold enough to inspire decisive action, which is amazing. So, before we dive into that, though, Alex, you don't just wake up and start doing this stuff. I'd like to know what has helped make you the man you are today.
Oh, I mean, I've come at this this field from a very, very strange direction, because most people who work in the world of strategy, I mean, quite understandably, they have some degree of qualification or experience or competence in the field. And I have none of that stuff. Or maybe I have the competence, but I definitely don't have the qualification or the experience, because I worked my way up from the advertising industry. I wasn't working for a company that did anything to do with strategy. I never had a line manager who knew about strategy. I never read a book about strategy. But I had these sort of theories from working in the advertising space about how business should be done. And as I articulated it at the time, because I was coming from this advertising background, I had this thesis that I called "Make interesting companies, not interesting advertising." I thought that what you actually see, generally speaking, for most businesses, this is quite a sort of like a simplistic analysis, but I still think even now it's broadly true. What you get from most companies is you get a quite generic, uninteresting, undifferentiated, commodified business that's doing something which people can easily get from elsewhere. And then the way that they try to win in the market is that they will go out and they will try and do good marketing, good advertising, as it was for me at the time. And this is basically the battle that they have. And they'll spend more and more money on marketing, and they'll cut their prices in order to compete on price. And this is how people win at business. And I was like, well, occasionally we would have a client that would come along who wasn't doing anything like that. What they were actually offering something that was genuinely unique and different and interesting. And if you're in the advertising industry and somebody comes along with something like that, what you quickly realize is that all of your creativity and intelligence and all of that stuff that you're normally selling, it doesn't actually matter all that much, because you don't actually need to spin the company in order to make people want it. What they're doing is actually just intrinsically valuable from the get-go. And my idea at the time was, hey, I don't want to help companies do good ads. I want to help companies become so interesting and charismatic that they don't need to do advertising at all. There are some famous businesses who actually have sort of these zero advertising policies, like Tesla never did any advertising. At the time, Monster energy drinks, they never did any advertising. So there are a few of them out there who do that. And this was my whole idea. And I tried to create a business around this. And sure enough, you quickly find that like nobody wants to buy this. Like nobody understood what I was talking about. There was really no market for this kind of like weird, quirky alternative approach to advertising. But gradually, what I started to understand was that the ideas that I was putting across were actually very similar to classical business strategy, sort of your Harvard Business Review kind of approach to strategy. I was just putting these ideas across with very different language because I was kind of making it up. I hadn't necessarily learned it from an authoritative source. And over time, then what I discovered is that most businesses out there, it's a kind of a cliche now to say that most businesses out there don't have strategy, or they don't understand strategy. They don't do strategy well. They just don't engage with the subject at all. And that's because they don't really understand it or vibe with it the way that it's normally written. But because I was sort of writing about it and talking about it in this new way, exactly the same ideas, quite frankly, but just different vocabulary, suddenly this opened up the field to a huge new set of businesses who just weren't really interested in strategy before. And this is then how I guess I found my niche and built up my audience online and sold the book, et cetera, essentially saying things that, look, if you want to read an MBA textbook about strategy, you can learn 80-90% of the same stuff that I'm telling you. But the fact is that most people don't want to read a book about MBA strategy. Maybe they should, but they don't. They want something that is a much more sort of accessible and sort of easygoing way of consuming the same information and understanding the same principles. So yeah, it was a real sort of reversing arse backwards into this industry. But yeah, it was not planned, but that's just how it unfolded. And that's obviously how these things tend to turn out.
Well, I think too, is some people come into this as you see these viral videos, right? I think sometimes people come into ideas or quote unquote strategies and they think, oh, this is going to be the viral one. I don't think you can look for the viral video, right? I don't think you can create a viral video without it just kind of happening organically. Would you agree with that?
Yeah. Well, I mean, if I would doubly agree with that, because my whole big breakout is that I myself went viral. 2 years ago, something like that. Was it 2 years ago? Was it 2 years ago? 3 years ago? I don't know. Anyway, I think 2. And yeah, there's a huge amount of luck and timing and everything else associated with that. Obviously, you need to have struck upon a good idea and something that is going to resonate with people. But at the same time, even when you have that, it's still not guaranteed to catch fire. I mean, I think that when I'm doing strategy work with companies, the pattern is always exactly the same. That the thing that makes a business work is never, or almost never, the thing that the founder, the entrepreneur, whoever planned. Like, we all go into business with an idea. We think to ourselves, oh, right, yes, my business is going to be all about X, whatever it is. And that initial concept, it very, very rarely is the thing that actually gives that business traction. If you're like a financial advisor, for example, people will think that, the real thing that people are paying me for, the thing that's going to make me a successful financial advisor, is my expertise in such and such a field, or my way of doing things. But actually, points of traction that are actually driving the business tend to be accidental. They tend to be unplanned things. And the difference between the businesses that kick on and manage to scale and the businesses that get stuck is basically, does the chief executive, does the founder, do they have the ability to realize what their accidental sources of advantage are and sort of pivot to them and leave behind their original idea, which was, frankly, just a prototype, just a way of getting in the game. Most business leaders, they're not capable of letting go of their original idea even long after it has stopped serving them.
Yeah. It's amazing how they'll die on the hill for some of that stuff, isn't it? It's like, man, I'm hell bent on this versus adapting and changing. And I think anytime you start something, I remember starting our company 11 years ago and been in this industry for 24 years, the things I thought would happen didn't happen, and the things I didn't even think about happened, right? And so that's the other part of just showing up every day consistently, that you got to be ready to adapt and have a game plan for it. Fair?
Yeah, completely. I mean, and you're going to see that pattern with like every big sort of successful company. Everyone knows that the original iteration of, I don't know, Facebook, for sake of argument, wasn't a social media thing. It was a sort of website to rate how attractive people were in Harvard University, and can you imagine, if Mark Zuckerberg had not read The Room, and he had been like, you know what, damn it, this website is about rating how hot people are, and I'm sticking to it. To it. I believe in my vision. Like, it would have been, maybe we'd all be better off if he had done that, but he wouldn't have been regardless. And so, you need to have, fundamentally, it's a system built on humility. It's a system built on always assuming that you don't know enough, and that there is, and that you can upgrade your thinking, and that you can shed your prior assumptions of your business. So you want to be proven wrong with your business, ideally every single day. Every time you are proved wrong about something, that's cash in the bank right there. Yeah. But do we do we welcome being proved wrong? No, of course not. But from a strategy perspective, we should be.
Yeah.
We should
talk about the importance of a mission statement or a purpose, and you can see here on my microphone, F greater than P. This is, people probably get tired of hearing me listen or talk about this stuff on the podcast, but it's helping you achieve a future greater than your past. And I think a lot of, our clients would know that, or my friends, people listen to this but the most important thing is the people in our culture, right? The people that work every single day at Visionary Wealth Advisors. I hope, 90+%, if not all of them, could just state it like that. That's our mission statement, helping you achieve a future greater than your past. Not that your past was bad, but we want to keep getting better. How do we how do we build a culture, a strategy for those listening that they want to talk about your mission? They live your mission, they live your purpose, and how they live and breathe it.
Right. So I have a very contrarian viewpoint on this topic. So what you're going to generally find, the reason I think that businesses typically have a sort of mission statement or purpose or something like that, and the reason that they should have it, other than just because obviously you want to believe in the thing, but let's just put that aside and think about why is it useful to have one of these things? And typically the reason is that it gives you and the team a bit of kind of fire in your belly and a sense of excitement and mission, obviously, with what you're doing. So, it acts essentially as the fuel for the business. So that's great. But the problem comes is the way that businesses try to create these things. Maybe you might have the odd lucky business where it was just always so clear and non-negotiable for you from day one. But normally that's not the case. Normally people actually sit down and think, oh, gee, I better come up with a mission or something like that. And what they tend to do is it tends to be the first thing that they come up with. So they come up with this grand mission or vision or whatever sort of terminology they're going to use for it. And this kind of like future state that they want to create. And then after that, they then kind of move on to strategy and they think, okay, well, how can we now make that happen? And they try to come up effectively with a strategy to get to that vision or to support that vision. This is completely the wrong way around of doing it, because what you generally find in that situation is two issues. Firstly, most people are not very imaginative when it comes to creating sort of mission and vision. So this is why you get so many of these things that end up being, some sort of incredibly flabby, frankly, kind of meaningless, we strive to serve our customers better and better with excellence every day, or something that you just don't need to say it. You just don't need to say it. It's like you'd be better off saving your breath than saying something which should fundamentally just go without saying for any business. And that's a failure of imagination. So it's very hard to come up with one just from scratch, unless you had, like I say, one that you had all along. And then the second thing, even if you do come up with one, it then becomes very, very hard to create a strategy oriented to that thing, which is also going to earn you money. Because you've got competing interests there. You need to think about when you're figuring out the strategy for your business. On the one hand, you've got this sort of high-minded mission that you're pointing towards. And then on the other hand, you also just want the business to make money. And it's quite hard to come up with a strategy that does both of these things. So the solution to this, which I think is really powerful and that every business kind of needs to embrace, is where you flip the order here. And you actually initially, you don't think about like the mission of your business at all or anything like that. All you think about sort of brass tacks, how is this business going to earn money? How is this business actually going to grow? What can we do which is going to drive demand in what we're selling? The strategy should first and foremost be directed at the commercial success of the business, and how you can ultimately give more value to customers that they're going to pay for. When you then develop that strategy, which is 100% commercially directed, what you can then do is you can then create a mission out of that strategy. So essentially what you do is you look at just like you take the impact that your business has for one customer, and then you imagine, all right, if we were incredibly successful, if we were successful beyond our wildest dreams, what would it look like if we did this for 1 million customers? What would the ultimate version of this look like? And how would that change our industry? How would that change our customers' lives? How would that change the world at large, culture at large? And that bigger picture potential thing that would come from the business being successful, you can then make that your mission. And the beauty of that is that you've just created a mission which is 100% aligned with the commercial strategy of your business. So the more you're pushing towards that mission, the more you're driving the commercial strategy, and the two things are working in tandem. So just to give you a very, very basic example, you might say, like, in my case, right, it emerged over time, like I said, that that my strategy is obviously built largely around simplifying the strategy industry, and that's kind of like the value that I bring to this particular sector. So that's how I make money, right? I'm not doing that because I'm like sort of a nice guy or anything like that. I'm just doing that because that's what people apparently will pay for. But then when I imagine the bigger impact of that, if I was to be like incredibly successful, what we have is, you know, something about like making strategy accessible for every business on the planet, or helping every company on the planet give 10 times more value than what it was giving before because they've understood these principles, blah, blah, blah. So you can blow that strategy up into something which is much more mission driven and much more exciting. So yeah, if you think of your mission as the last thing that your business thinks about, the last thing that you create, rather than the first thing that you create, I actually think you can come up with something that's much more original, much more ownable, much more powerful.
Yeah. And I couldn't agree more, man. We had we started the company, did the whole room, get people in a room, and we started to write it all. And it's like, it was one of those things that was so cliche of a mission. And it's like, well, of course, no crap, right? No kidding that you want to be best in wealth management and world class and all this stuff. That's just table stakes, right? And it's like, nobody was fired up behind that. And then it's like, as we just kind of kept going along, I don't remember exactly, but I got to think we were probably 3 or 4 years old as a company before we, like, this just hit me like a ton of bricks. Like, this is it, right? And you can just feel it internally. And it's like, people can rally around it. It's easy to say. You can have a little thing on a microphone or a hat, you know, and it's I don't know, man. I think that's what people sometimes, they try to get too much perfection on those things. What's my mission, my vision, and all that? While I massively believe in them, I think it just kind of has to organically flow, and you'll get it over time when it's right, you know, but 100%. Stay focused.
Yeah. I mean, people they rush it so much, and the 4-year time horizon that you talk about, like, you know, that is about right. You know, I think that some people do it, some people are quicker, some people are slower. But like, basically, you shouldn't expect to really nail these parts of your business until you've had at least 2 years water under the bridge, maybe more. The idea that you would sit down on day one of the business and map everything out, although it sort of feels right, it's just crazy, because it's all going to be proved wrong. It's all going to be proved nonsense by experience in due course.
Yeah, but I think the other side of that, on the other side of that coin, though, is some people, it's the old saying, paralysis by analysis, right? Oh, I can't move forward because I don't have the perfect statement, and I don't have the perfect vision, and I don't have this, binder that's made, and I can go through and show everybody how perfect it's going to be. It's like, who cares, man? Have something, but then get to work and show up every day and do it, and then eventually it will come to you.
Precisely. The very simple way that I think about it is that, like, you have to have a prototype idea for your business to just get you in the game, and that idea can kind of that could kind of be anything. I mean, it shouldn't be completely stupid, but like the pressure on that idea is extremely low. And you tell yourself it's a prototype so that you're not holding on to it too closely, and then you have a 2-3 year period of pure throwing shit at the wall, seeing what sticks, a period of pure observation, by which you gradually start to see what actually is this thing that I've created. There's this Dolly Parton line, which I think is the single greatest piece of strategic business advice ever written. It carries so much weight, and the line is, find out who you are and do it on purpose. And this is fundamentally the process that every business is going through. Like, the business has an identity which goes beyond what you as the founder want it to be. Your job is to find out what that is by observing, where are things working, where are things not working, et cetera, et cetera. And one day, 4 years in, whatever, you're going to see what this business is meant to do, and you'll be like, that's it. And then, as she says, you can start doing it on purpose. You can start putting all of your focus and energy and thinking behind that realization. And this is when the business is going to explode. This is when you're going to see that acceleration.
Yeah, love it. Doing my research, I looked at this topic you like to talk about, is the costly trap of chasing customers instead of competitors. Talk about that.
Oh, yeah. What you'll hear a lot of, which sounds very sensible, is that, like, if you want to figure out, how you can sort of develop a great offer that people are going to want to buy, blah, 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 the first thing you should do is, you should listen to your customers. And you should, your customers are going to have all sorts of insights and great ideas. And if you just listen to them and then give them what they want, well, then obviously, logically, that's going to please them. And then you're going to be able to sell a lot of that stuff. Now, I will say that listening to your customers and understanding what your customers think and want, etc., is extremely important in a general day-to-day basis, just for, delivering your service well. But what it is not going to do, it's not going to give you a high leverage strategy that's going to help you outcompete other people in your market. And the reason for that is very, very simple. Every single business in your market, because it's a sensible thing to do, are speaking to the customers and trying to satisfy the customers' needs, and they're trying to play exactly this game. And so, if everybody's asking the same questions, and if everyone's looking for their breakthrough in the same place, they're all going to come to the same answer, and that is what then drives commodification in most industries. What drives commodification in most industries is that everybody in that industry is furiously listening to their customers. And of course, all the customers are always going to tell you the same unimaginative things, because that's just, how people are. Everybody wants things to be quicker. Everyone wants things to be cheaper, whatever else it is. And so all of the businesses are falling over themselves to please their customers. And actually, in doing so, they're completely destroying any competitive advantage they might have had. So this is why listening to your customers is actually a lot less effective than people think it is. On the flip side of this, you'll also get a lot of people who say, and they think they sound very clever when they say this. They say, you know what, I don't pay any attention to what my competitors are doing. I'm just here. I'm just trying to do a great job over here, and it's not my problem what my competitors are doing. But actually, it is your problem. It's massively your problem, because every single business exists within a context which is set by its competitors, right? So if you take, like, I don't know, like Ford, whatever Ford does, it is all in the context of whatever else is going on in the car industry. And so you actually do need to pay a lot of attention to your competitors, because what your competitors are doing is defining the landscape that you're working within. And when you observe what your competitors are doing, you can then see what your competitors are not doing. And you can then find the open space in your market. So, of course, you should not be looking at your competitors so that you can copy them. You should be looking at your competitors so that you can counter signal them, so that you can avoid copying them. So, basically, so you can find the white space in your category. Now, the customer will never tell you where the white space is. Only will your competitors tell you where the white space is. So, yeah, I think it's much, much more important to have. You need to sort of like, it's about raising your vision up from, you shouldn't only be looking at like your business and your customers and what's going on in that soup. That's one level of analysis, but it's not the important level of analysis. The important level of analysis is to look out across the entire industry, and plus interconnected industries, like related industries. So, if you're I'm just imagining here, but if you're a financial advisor, a sort of an adjacent industry might be accounting firms, let's say. So like you need to understand all those relationships as well. And then when you're looking at those broader industry level relationships, that's when you're going to start to see where the opportunities are, where the space is. And it is great because because it's the common wisdom, all of your competitors are just going to be thinking customer, 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 and right. You're playing a higher level game.
Well, they say you're playing chess, not checkers, right?
Yeah, that would definitely be a good way of putting it. Although, again, there is one minor caveat that I would make to this, just being conscious of like, if you're talking about an industry like wealth management or any industry where there is a huge volume of businesses in that space, the competitive pressure is actually a little bit less in that situation, because like if you think about like if I'm a car brand in a market where there's only, let's say, 6 or 7 other brands and all of the customers know about them, it's very, very important that I'm doing something different than those other companies. But if I'm a financial advisor or a graphic designer or something like this, and I'm playing in a pool not where there's 5 or 6 competitors, I'm playing in a pool where there's like 10,000 competitors. This actually makes your job a hell of a lot easier, because if you think about it, your customer, they haven't heard of those 10,000 other competitors. They're not shopping around 10,000 brands. So the likelihood of them having heard of other people in your sector is extremely low. So it doesn't, in that situation, matter quite so much that what you're doing is truly unique, because it's very unlikely that your customer has heard of all the other options. In that situation, I think what matters more is that what you are doing is very clear and very compelling, even if it is kind of similar to a couple of other people. Yeah. So, you don't have to sweat it, I guess is what I'm saying.
Yeah. What is the strategy you use daily to get your job done, to be efficient, to be productive, to be a student of the game, right? All the stuff, to just be a great leader, great business owner. What are some of those things that you do daily?
The main one that springs to mind is that I will, bearing in mind that I'm a one-person business, so obviously if you were a 100-person business, the dynamic looks a bit different, but I try to spend 70% of my time, 70% of my energy, 70% of my attention on marketing, and only 10% of my attention on actually delivering for the customer, delivering for the client. I think for a lot of people, this sounds like completely bonkers, completely backwards. I think that we assume if we're in a service business, we think like, okay, if I'm an accountant, then most of my week is going to be spent doing accounting stuff for clients. And then maybe I'll spend a little bit of time on admin and I'll spend a little bit of time on marketing. This is completely backwards. Every single business needs to have almost all of its energy spent on marketing, because the delivery side of your business, whatever it is that you're delivering, that should be something that that you've got down pat so much that it should be quite systematized. It should be very efficient. It should be very smooth. It should be obviously as automated as it can possibly be. So it should, by definition, take a very, very small amount of time. I look at all the other sort of solo coaches, consultants, advisors, people who are doing a similar kind of business model to me, but in a different field. And universally, the mistake that they're making when they're complaining, oh, I don't have enough leads or whatever, the mistake that they're making is, I'm like, well, are you spending at least 3, ideally 4 days a week on pure marketing activities? The answer is, and normally the answer is not only no. Normally they're spending an hour a week, a couple of hours a week. And I'm like, well, okay, like you can see the problem here. Yeah, I think it was Peter Drucker. He said that he said the core job of every single business in the world, the core function of every business in the world, is marketing and innovation, and everything else the business does is just a cost center. And once you get that into your head, then you can completely change the way that your business operates, and you suddenly see, like, geez, no wonder I wasn't getting very many clients.
Yeah. So what's an example? Like, what are 2 or 3 things that you're doing for marketing on a daily basis?
So I will spend probably a day and a half a week purely on content creation. So obviously, different businesses have got different ways that they do marketing. In my case, it's primarily driven through LinkedIn, newsletter, this kind of stuff. So I'll spend like a day and a half or so a week literally just sitting there writing stuff that I'm going to pump out. And maybe that will even stretch to 2 days. Then I'll probably spend another day of the week on things that you could loosely class as innovation, which is sort of like essentially developing product that I could market, which might be, it might just be a tweak to, let's say, the way that I'm doing my consulting engagements, or it might be an entire new offer or sort of product. But fundamentally, I guess you could just say creating new things to sell, so that you've always got something.
Could be like a class or how to this, or how to that, or whatever, marketing 101, whatever it may be. Yep. Exactly.
Yeah. Could be any of that kind of stuff. I guess those are the 2 big. Oh yeah, and those are the 2 big buckets. And then I'll also sometimes dedicate some time specifically to just sales related activities. So distinguishing between marketing and sales, focusing more on the conversion side of things, focusing more on the sort of profit maximization side of things, or even obviously clearly just doing, sales calls and stuff like that. So
awesome.
So yeah, that's a pretty full dance card before you've actually started, doing strategy for people.
Yeah, absolutely. Talk about your book. We've talked a lot about strategy, but your book is called No Bullsht Strategy. Tell us a little bit about that, and where do our listeners get it?
I mean, yeah, it pretty much does what it says on the tin. It's 138 pages, or if you listen to the audiobook, it's like 3 hours, 3 and a bit hours. So it's short. And this is basically just very practical, straightforward, hopefully quite fun primer on strategy. And look, I think that by definition, anyone who's running a business, the only job that they have, in my opinion, is strategy, because every other job that they're doing, basically it could be outsourced. Maybe they don't it could be delegated. Maybe they don't delegate it, but they could. But strategy, when all is said and done, is actually answering the question of, what does this business do? And depending on the quality of answer to that question is going to determine the quality of results. So it should be the main thing that people are taking seriously. And so this book is as direct and usable and short a resource probably that you're going to get, that just tells you how to do this piece of the kind of business leadership pie.
Awesome.
It's kind of simple as that.
Well, we will put that in the show notes for sure. And man, it's been awesome having you, Alex M.H. Smith, on the podcast, man. Thanks for being with us. And ILL. See if he remembers it.
I-N-I. I-N-I. I was struggling there for a minute. I was like, wait a minute.
Wait a second. What am I supposed to say here? That was only 1 year of my life.
Yeah, and actually, you can if people go to basicarts.org/welcome. I basically put a link to the book and then plus a whole bunch of other free stuff that you can use right there. So you could go check that out.
Awesome, man. Well, thanks so much for being with us. And if you ever get to the St. Louis area, man, you look us up.
I hope so.